So today we are going to start the long-term blood regulation. So this is our vascular physiology. So in long-term blood regulation, mainly the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system plays, that is, in short form, our RAS system. This plays a major role in controlling the blood regulation, especially in long period of time. So kidneys play mainly important role in this system and involves lungs and circulatory system. Also liver is also included here. Let us see how all these are included. So for example, you take like a person has hemorrhage means a lot of blood loss because of injury. So because of this there is a decrease in blood pressure of course, and neurological system help to increase. Yeah, of course, neurological system help to increase, we already know. In short term regulation, in our previous video we already discussed that in short term regulation mainly neurological or autonomic nervous system, sympathetic parasympathetic play a major role. So but that is only for long short time, not for long time. But long time only our kidneys can play the role, but only for short term. Yeah, so for long time the system, this system, that is kidney RAS system, is better involved. So let us see how it is involved. So for example, now the blood pressure is decreased because of hemorrhage, we have discussed, right? We are in this case now. Think a person got any accident, he lost lot of blood, so now blood pressure is decreased. So the blood reaching the renal circulation, of course it will also decrease, that is decrease in renal perfusion. Blood passes through the glomerular capillaries and it filters there, we know that. So because in body, of course, in whole body blood is low, even in the renal also, in kidneys, not only kidneys, in all other organs also blood flow will be low, and the blood flow to the kidneys decrease, and the smooth muscles of the efferent arteriole undergo changes. So our kidney is mainly, for example, let us draw it here. So this is Bowman's capsule, this is our PCT, right? Let us draw it here only. So this is the efferent arteriole, here goes the efferent arteriole. So now what they are saying, efferent arteriole undergoes the changes. It is called as the smooth muscles of efferent arteriole undergoes the changes. This is called as Polskin's group. So near the under the efferent artery like this, the smooth muscles, they form a Polskin's group like this. The cells get nearer and form a Polskin group, and their cells act as a baroreceptors. So we already discussed previously what are baroreceptors, which are usually present in carotid sinus, right, which give the information when the blood pressure is low. Even here in the kidneys mainly this Polskin cell act as baroreceptors, and the macula densa of the DCT. Actually here comes DCT, distal convoluted tubule thick limb, because here the thin limb. So thick limb comes here, and here it has some cells called as macula densa. So this macula densa and this Pulchin cell together form the JGA, that is juxtaglomerular apparatus. Why the name juxtaglomerulus? Juxta means near to glomerulus. This is glomerulus side. So near to glomerulus there is an apparatus, that is JGA, which mainly include densa, macula densa. Don't confuse it with we have here mesangial cells. Mesangial cells are present in the basement membrane, or they're part of the membranes of a glomerular capsule. But this macula densa is present here. It is associated in a JGA. So densa along with Pulkinson cells. So they are like baroreceptors of the DCT. They act as chemoreceptors. So this is very important. So what are the baroreceptors? Baroreceptors are what which mainly are concerned whenever the blood pressure is lowered or higher. So they're mainly sensitive to the blood pressure. But chemoreceptors are the which that normally they are present in our carotid body. They're present in body. They're present in sinus. BS CB, I remember like that. Chemoreceptors in bodies, carotid body, baroreceptors in carotid sinus. So these chemoreceptors are sensitive to mainly oxygen level and also carbon dioxide level. So what are the chemoreceptors here? This macula densa is a chemoreceptor, and these Pulkinson cells are baroreceptors. So both together form a JGA. So baroreceptors and chemoreceptors are connected by the connective tissue cells called Lasix cells. This is also important. We have Lasix cells in between. These are the connective tissue which combine this both together. So that is the Pulkinson plus macula densa plus Lasix cells together form the JGA. There is a juxtaglomerular apparatus which is very near to the glomerulus, hence the name. That's what we are discussing. So the macula densa are mainly sodium sensitive cells. They're present in DCT. So whenever, for example, as we are now discussing, the blood pressure is low low because of hemorrhage. As the blood pressure is low now, the blood which is coming to the kidney is also low, so that blood moves, like the filtered GFR is also low, so blood moves very slowly. So almost, I think almost everything, sodium is reabsorbed here. So only little sodium reaches here, coming to the distal convoluted tubule. So the macula densa, as you said, these are the chemoreceptors. Chemoreceptors means they're mainly like sensing the sodium, calcium, carbon dioxide, all this ions. So here sodium is less. Now the macula densa tries that, what is the sodium is low, it will give the message to JGA. So like this, let us see what happens now. So sodium sensitive cells, it is present in every nephron structure. So they adjust the blood pressure according to the body and the sodium concentration. So according to body, they always adjust it. So now it is low. So now it orders the JGA cells urgently go and release renin. So okay, let us see this. So decrease in BP in the afferent arterioles are less stress and the blood passes through the venous system and reach the main circulation as renin or systemic circulation. So now first renin is released in our renal circulation. Later from this renal circulation, it just passes by blood into our systemic circulation. So now filtration pressure is very low in the glomeruli, so decrease filtrate and fluid moves very slowly through glomerulus. So GFR is decreased as they are moving slowly. Excessive sodium is reabsorbed. That's what we have discussed. So only decrease in 10% reach the early, means only 10% reach the DCT. That is 10% of sodium only reaches the thick side of distal convoluted tubule of macula densa. So as it's so sensitive to decrease in sodium, it urgently gets stimulated, the JGA, and it finally releases more renin. So renin is mainly released by two factors. So what are the factors which help in release of renin? That is mainly efferent arteriole. Whenever it gets stretched, it also can release renin, and whenever the GFR is low, then also it may lead to release of renin. Why whenever GFR is low, renin releases? Because low, almost lot of sodium is reabsorbed. So low sodium activates the macula densa, and efferent arteriole also have some receptors. Whenever they stretch, means whenever the decrease in stretch, always, afferent arteriole and efferent arteriole, they do high pressure filtration, so always the pressure is very high. But whenever the stretch of this arterioles decreases, then it gets out that something is wrong. So this both indicate to form the renin. So JGA have mainly beta receptors, so epinephrine and norepinephrine also can act under the sympathetic stimulation and further release of renin. Sympathetic stimulation always, it's like a pro, means it's not anti, it's like pro, means it's always like promoting the production of substances. So here renin is furthermore increased because of sympathetic nervous system. So finally, by three ways the renin is increased in the systemic circulation. So now I think you should say without seeing what are the three ways by which renin is increasing: because of this GFR, because of this efferent arteriole, because of sympathetic. Now let us check that is there or not. Yeah, of course, because of decrease in glomerular filtration, because of efferent arteriole stretch, and because of sympathetic nervous system. So these are the main three ways by which our renin is increased in our systemic circulation. So renin is an enzyme which is increased, and angiotensinogen, it's mainly released by hepatocytes. That's why we said before only here liver is also taking part. The liver cells, main parenchymal cells, no, stromal cells, parenchymal cells, okay. So mainly liver releases the hepatocytes, the cells of the liver. So this hepatocytes mainly releases angiotensinogen into the circulation. Now already in our circulation renin is present, now this also comes there. So it is inactivated. Angiotensinogen is presently inactivated in a blood, present in normal circulation. Renin act on this angiotensinogen and convert into the angiotensin 1. So this is how this inactivated enzyme is now activated by means of our renin. So this is activated into angiotensin 1, that is a decapeptide, means it contains 10 amino acids. Decapeptide meaning is it contains 10 amino acids. So angiotensin 1 mainly have 10 amino acids. So angiotensin 1 pass towards the right heart and reach the lungs. Means now it is passing in inferior vena cava, next coming to right heart, and finally it reaches the lungs, via pulmonary artery. And their endothelial cell, in lung also they have endothelial cells. So in lung, their endothelial cell have a unique enzyme called angiotensin converting enzyme. So now already because of renin, our inactive angiotensinogen is activated into angiotensin 1. Now because of this angiotensin converting enzyme which is present in the endothelial cells of our liver, now this in turn again convert the angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. So by cutting two peptides, means now till now we have seen it's decapeptide, it has 10 amino acids. So minus 2 is nothing but 8 amino acids. So you can remember that in angiotensin 2 we have 8 amino acids. So angiotensin 2 is a octapeptide. Of course 8 means we say octa, so octapeptide. So angiotensin 2 reach the systemic circulation and they have the 7 pass receptor coupled with G protein which break down the lipids and it act on the endoplasmic reticulum and release the calcium in the venous smooth muscle. So it has come to the venous side, now it is activating the G protein. So because of this the calcium is released in our venous smooth muscle, so they constrict. So when a calcium is released, always calcium leads to constriction. We are discussing this like from a lot of videos. When now the vessel is constricted it becomes narrows, so the blood flow decreases but the total peripheral resistance increases, so this in turn leads to increase in blood pressure. So constrict the arteries and we can finally say that they are the vasoconstrictor. So always remember, even if you remember before, in a short term regulation sympathetic system also leads to vasoconstriction. So anything, always this is a keyword, anything which lead to vasoconstriction will in turn increase the blood pressure. So this is very important. So vasoconstriction increase the venous return, yeah, because constricted now, blood pressure is increased now. So more venous return. More venous return means end-diastolic volume, again coming the Frank Starling law. More end-diastolic volume or more preload leading to more stroke volume. That is nothing but increasing the cardiac output, increasing the systolic blood pressure. So this is how systolic blood pressure is increased. And because of this renin system, even the arterioles get constricted. Here also total peripheral resistance is increased and diastolic blood pressure is increased. So, if you know already, arterioles are mainly related with resistance, though they are also called as resistance vessel, and veins are also called as capacitance vessel. Just it's like revision, okay? So, angiotensin 2 have receptors in the central nervous system also. Now, this angiotensin 2 has some role in our central nervous system also because it has some receptors there and it act on the certain neurons in the hypothalamus mainly of the thirst center. So, the sense of thirst is increased. So, this is how angiotensin 2 also leads to uh, increase in thirstness. So we drink more water, so because of drinking water also the blood volume is increased and cardiac output is increased. So whatever, this is like a compensatory mechanism, because already because of hemorrhage, now the condition we are talking about hemorrhage, because of hemorrhage already lot of blood loss. So now our body is like very clever, very smart, and it's like very good mechanism, you can see very smart mechanism to protect us whenever the blood volume is low, protect us from shock, because if lot of blood volume is lost we may go into shock and also sometimes death. So hypothalamus increases the thirst center and more drinking of water, so increase in blood volume in turn increase the cardiac output. So this is how our compensatory mechanism works. So all sympathetic nerve endings have angiotensin 2 receptors and release the norepinephrine and act as a cardiostimulant and increase the stabilized blood pressure. So you can see why we are saying that when compared with short term regulation, long term is very great, because in long term you can see because of renin there are, because of especially angiotensin 2, you can see lot of constriction is going on in veins, arteries, and also you can see sympathetic system is also adding here. So this is leading to major increase in the blood pressure when compared with the short term regulation. So this completely stabilizes the blood pressure. So it has a receptors on adrenal gland, cortical area. So now this also go and act on adrenal gland. In adrenal gland is present on kidney in the name adrenal. Ad means upon kidney. So upon kidney you have this adrenal gland which has cortex, medulla, like every organ, right? So it cortical area mainly has this, the structures zona glomerulosa, fasciculata, yeah, zona reticularis. It's like a flower with roots. Reticula means roots, you can remember R for R, and fasciculata is like branches, stem, and glomerulosa is like a flower. So this fasciculata mainly release glucocorticoids, and reticularis secrete androgen. So like this every cell has its special function to release certain products. So mainly now what a renin does is it forms a aldosterone. It leads to the release of aldosterone from the adrenal gland acting on the cortical area. So because of stimulation of cortical area, now the aldosterone is released into the blood. Now let us see what happens to this story. So you can see the cells of glomerulosa have receptors for angiotensin 2. So stimulated zona glomerulosa produce the hormone aldosterone. So mainly aldosterone is released from the glomerulosa, like the flower-like part. From that flower-like part we get the aldosterone, and through circulation it reaches the renal tissue, which is a steroid hormone. So remember that aldosterone in the name only you can see sterone. Sterone means it's a steroid hormone. Steroid hormones, they are mainly produced from cholesterol, right? So it works in the distal convoluted tubule and called principal and also called principal cell, and retains the salt and water. So mainly aldosterone main work is to retain salt and water. You can understand if lot of salt and water is not going into our urine, means lot of it is retained, so that in turn again it also increases the blood pressure. So the aldosterone bind with the intracellular receptor and act as a transcription factor and stimulate the sodium. It has mainly three genes. So it stimulates the three genes. First one, sodium gene, gene 1, sodium potassium ATPase, gene 3, potassium channel. So what this do actually, this gene 1 sodium, this gene 2 sodium potassium ATPase, we'll see this what happens, and they synthesize sodium potassium ATPases. So this sodium potassium ATPases concentration is now increased in the basolateral membrane of a principal cell of a distal convoluted tubule. So on basolateral, let us, as already we drawn here, right? So this is a lumen side, so this is a lumen cell. Basolateral means which is this side. Here we have peritubular capillaries, right? So this side is a lumen side, this side is a basolateral side. So now this sodium potassium ATPases go to the basolateral side, basolateral membrane, and they constantly throw the sodium 3 sodium out of the cell to the interstitium, and that sodium reaches the circulation, and the gene 1 sodium is activated on the other luminal membrane along with gene 3 potassium channels are arranged over the luminal membrane. So actually now what happens is the sodium potassium ATPases which is here gets activated, and it continuously throw the sodium out into the capillaries. Always sodium follows water, so sorry, water follows sodium. So now as sodium is going out into capillaries, even water goes, so this leads to increase in blood pressure and blood volume. So that in turn increases the cardiac output. So now even the sodium channels, gene 1 is also activated, it is put here, and also potassium is activated. So now lot of sodium and water are going in, and lot of potassium is coming now into this principal cell, and this potassium, now it's in higher concentration in these cells when compared with lumen. So now this potassium start leaking out into the lumen, and this leads to increase in potassium in the urine. So that is the mechanism. So now the principal cell becomes poor in sodium, and as the luminal membrane has sodium channels, they are entered into the principal cell and again removed out by the sodium potassium ATPases. So this is like continuous process. Now the sodium channel which is present over here, as now this cell is having less sodium, the sodium which is coming from the filtered blood, now it goes again into this, and again because of sodium potassium ATPases again it comes back into the capillaries. So this is how the blood pressure is maintained for a long time by this channels. So again removed out by sodium potassium ATPases, and potassium is now increased in cell through the luminal potassium leaky channels, where the potassium get out into the luminal side. So under the influence of aldosterone, salt, water are reabsorbed, and the waste potassium is passed along with the urine. So increase in salt and water increase the blood volume, increase the venous return, increase the stretch in the myocardium, increase the stroke volume, increase in cardiac output. Finally our main target is blood pressure is stabilized now. So in urine sodium is decreased, potassium is increased, and water is decreased. So this one you can see in urine always sodium is low in this condition, and potassium is very high, and water is low. So PCT, that is proximal convoluted tubule cells, also are rich in angiotensin II receptors. So they start taking more sodium from the luminal side and again get out by sodium potassium ATPase into the capillaries. And every time they take sodium, they leave one hydrogen out called counter transport. So every time, because of taking sodium, actually it is a counter transport, like this is a sodium, this is hydrogen. So every time sodium is going into the cell, and this hydrogen ion is coming out of the cell, that is a counter transport. So where we are, so this hydrogen binds with the bicarbonate which is present normally in the lumen. So this forms a H2CO3. This H2CO3 is further, because of some carbonic anhydrase enzyme, it is converted into carbon dioxide and water. So under the influence of carbonic anhydrase enzyme, this carbon dioxide enters the cell and bind with the, now inside the cell, now it enters the cell, uh, this HCO3, H2CO3 is converted into CO2. So this CO2 now goes inside the cell, and this CO2 inside again bind with the H and H2, and it forms H2CO3 again inside the cell. So you can see H2CO3 is formed inside the cell, HCO3 minus H plus. This again comes out to the lumen. Again this H plus is carried again out into the lumen. So, and the bicarbonate reaches the blood from the cell. So, PCT increase its absorption of bicarbonate, sodium in the blood. So, finally, what happens because of this result, even bicarbonate is also increased in the blood now. So, let us see few drugs which act on this system. So, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors are like CAP, inapril or lisinopril. So, they work on mainly on the endothelium of lung. So, the angiotensin converting enzymes are blocked. You know this mechanism now, and the angiotensin 2 can't be produced. If it is not produced, blood pressure cannot be maintained. So this drug decreases angiotensin 2 and veins get dilated now, and venous return is decreased, arterioles also dilate, diastolic volume is decreased, loss of sodium and bicarbonate takes place in urine. And because angiotensin 2 is decreased, it can't stimulate the zona glomerulosa of our adrenal gland, so it decreases aldosterone production also, and P cells, that is PCT cells, also can't retain the salt in water. So this leads to in turn decrease in blood volume, decrease in cardiac output, decrease in stroke volume, risk of hyperkalemia. Why hyperkalemia? Because before you see lot of potassium is coming out into the luminal side, so it can be excreted out. But now because of this problem, because they are not getting excreted out, so the blood is now very much rich in potassium. So in renal artery stenosis, that is whenever the renal artery gets narrow, the blood flow is decreased mainly to the right kidney. So because of this, GFR is decreased, and there is like risk of failure of kidney also. And kidney defend itself by releasing renin and produce angiotensin 2 extra. It produces extra angiotensin 2 which works specially on efferent arteriole, and it becomes narrow, and this in turn increases the GFR. So these are the compensatory mechanism. So it defend itself, and so angiotensin converting enzyme should not be given because angiotensin 2 is very low in blood, and efferent arterioles dilate and GFR becomes dangerously low, and this may also destroy kidney. So always we should be careful in renal artery stenosis patient. We should avoid giving the angiotensin to converting inhibiting enzymes or drugs. So next, coming to the drug spirolactone. So this drug is also similar to aldosterone structurally, and it binds to the aldosterone receptors. So and it doesn't stimulate the receptor because it is a false one. It is not the real aldosterone. So the aldosterone mediated actions are decreased because it is not aldosterone, and the salt water can't get retained, and they are also lost through urine again. So osartan is same. It also decreases the blood pressure mainly by blocking the angiotensin 2 receptors. So this 1 plus 2 plus 3 all are angiotensin 2 blocking drugs, are CAP, enalapril, lisoprenol, and all this other angiotensin 2 blockers. So these are all the angiotensin blocking drugs and their mechanism. Now let us see chemoreceptors.